All right. Everybody relax, okay? Everyone calm down. It's here. The first time I've been to a movie theater since March when I saw Ben Affleck plays an alcoholic high school Catholic basketball coach. And it's the new Chris Nolan movie. It's Tenet. It's Tenet. You know, Travis Scott's hit new film. I know it says review in the title of this video, but I'm just gonna talk, man. I'm just gonna go because that's the only way I know how to talk about this thing right now. This is more of just collecting my thoughts following your first viewing. I've slept on it and I feel absolutely the same as when I first came out of this thing. I should get out of the way first that I am a Christopher Nolan fan. I'm a pretty big Christopher Nolan fan. He's a big reason that I'm into filmmaking, and he is living proof that it is possible for a filmmaker to come out with original concepts that will make upwards of $1 billion. There are very few original filmmakers who are capable of doing that. I'm not, however, like some of these fucking nutcases that I think are the Nolanites or whatever. Those dudes are out of their minds. I'm willing to admit that not everything Christopher Nolan has made is perfect. Do I think he's made a bad movie? No. But Dark Knight Rises certainly has its flaws, but my enjoyment of that film always comes out on top when I watch that movie. So going into Tenet, right, I was very excited because Christopher Nolan movies come once in a blue moon. He doesn't have a ton of projects on his roster. He's got one at a time that he works on for 3-4 years and then pumps out. So this movie was a huge deal, but I will say it's the most skeptical that I've been going into a Chris Nolan film. The Fortnite trailer drop, unusual. The Travis Scott song, I love Travis Scott, but just a weird choice for Tenet, right? So I admit that I was a little bit skeptical going into this one. The most skeptical I've ever been going into a Chris Nolan movie, which isn't saying much, because the only ones I've seen in theaters have been the last 4. I was 11 when I saw Dark Knight Rises. I was 13 when I saw Interstellar, and then Dunkirk. I guess I was like kind of competent, I don't know. But coming out of this, I think I liked it. I also I'm still like brand new in this space, so I'm trying to measure out what works and what doesn't. So just give me a little time, all right? I don't even know where to start. The number one thing that I'm seeing right now, other than the confusion, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is that this is the Nolaniest film Chris Nolan has ever made. And I actually kind of disagree. I kind of think the opposite. I think this is the least Christopher Nolan type movie I've seen from him, other than story elements. The way that the film is presented, the way it feels, and the pace of it, I think is very different than anything Christopher Nolan has put out. The number one thing that I noticed was that this film has a different editor. Lee Smith did not work on this film, as he's worked on many Chris Nolan films. This was edited by Jennifer Lame, who did Hereditary. And I've read interviews that have had Chris Nolan talking about how he was opting for kind of a James Bond feel with this film, since those are huge influences on his filmmaking. But I wound up getting a lot more Jason Bourne out of this movie. This is the most Jason Bourne feeling film I've ever seen out of Chris Nolan. The editing is fast. There are a lot of cuts, and you find yourself jumping to a lot of different countries without entirely realizing how you got there, whereas something like Inception would have DiCaprio and JGL talking on the plane about why they need to go see Eames in Mombasa, whereas instead this time, John David Washington just kind of winds up in Mumbai, and they tell you why 5 minutes later. And that's where I think a lot of the jumbled nature of this film is coming from for a lot of people. Like I said, we'll talk about the confusion in a little bit because I think that's like the number one thing to talk about. But in terms of what I really, really liked about this movie, this film has some of the best action sequences I've seen in like the last 10 years. They are original. They are so well calculated and coordinated. They're blocked seamlessly and perfectly. Chris Nolan's direction, at the very least, is at the top of its game. It is clear that when he's handed a $200 million budget, he knows how to use it. He knows where to put it and what to do with it. The big thing people are talking about is the use of practical effects in this film. It shows that there is very little VFX. They've talked about how this movie has less VFX than a romantic comedy, and you can tell. The fact that the ending sequence is all practical is unbelievably impressive. Nathan Crowley, yes, yet again, does a fantastic job as production designer. Hoyt van Hoytema is an excellent cinematographer. This movie is stunning. He has done the work that he has done following Wally Pfister winning an Academy Award for Inception. He has made Chris Nolan's films, I think, he's brought a whole new look to them. And I love the way Wally Pfister's looked. But Hoyt van Hoytema has made Chris Nolan's films look just insanely beautiful in so many different worlds, right? You had Interstellar all in space. You had Dunkirk in 1940s Germany, or France, or whatever the fuck. I don't know. I'm not a history major. And then you have this, which is all over the goddamn globe. He has done an incredible job with versatile cinematography, as has Nathan Crowley with his production design. But I really do think Nolan is at the top of his game as a director. I think he continues to get better at coordinating action sequences, which many will agree is like the number one thing he's improved upon. Go back and watch Batman Begins. That shit like kind of looks pretty bad. Not the movie itself, but the coordination of the action scenes is much sloppier compared to something like Dark Knight, or even the way he coordinates Dunkirk. He knows how to use his extras in these big, vast spaces and then get really up close with the actors that are doing stunt work and are doing fight choreography. All that stuff in this film, the car chase, the ending, the opening, it is riveting stuff. Whenever there's a sequence of thrill, right? Because the movie is kind of a roller coaster. I think that's the point. I think it's meant to be this thrill ride. And anytime any of that stuff is happening, this movie's damn near flawless. I think all of that stuff is perfect, and I was on the edge of my seat this entire time, and the score is a huge part of that, which is also a new worker for Chris Nolan. It's Ludwig Göransson, I think is how you pronounce his name. Since Hans Zimmer was working on Dune, he took over after just winning an Oscar for Black Panther. People are mixed on his score. I think the score is great. We'll talk about the sound mix later, but I think the score itself is terrific. My number one question going into this movie was, how do they use the Travis Scott song? It is awesome when it pops up. I fucking loved how they used The Plan in this movie. It is so cool when it shows up, and it works in the scene so well. I got chills at that part, man. The performances are pretty spectacular. I wouldn't say there's any like real standout. I kind of think everyone did just as well. John David Washington obviously has gone from Denzel's kid to someone who can lead a film of this caliber or of a smaller caliber. He is clearly a leading man. Robert Pattinson is great. He's extremely charismatic. Elizabeth Debicki is great, as she always is. The only one that I kind of like struggled with sometimes was Kenneth Branagh, and I think it's my own fault because every time he does the accent, I think about Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit, and then I start giggling to myself. I'm sure Kenneth Branagh is really good in this movie, but I couldn't get that fucking part out of my head, dude. It was really funny. But that kind of leads into characters, right? And with a lot of Chris Nolan movies, I've disagreed with a lot of criticisms that people have. Like, for instance, when Interstellar came out, people complained a lot about the sound mix and that the dialogue was inaudible amidst the score. I did not feel that way. I saw it in theaters. I could understand everything that was being said. When Dunkirk came out, people complained about the lack of character. I thought that was necessary in Dunkirk. I disagreed with that criticism of Dunkirk, but I somewhat agree with it here. Not entirely, because I'm okay with the fact that John David Washington's character doesn't have a lot of depth. He doesn't have a name. He's just the protagonist, and that's his purpose in the story, is just to be the protagonist and to save the world. He's committed to his job. He's moderately reckless. He's intelligent, and he's curious. And all of that stuff I picked up from John David Washington's performance and from the writing. Robert Pattinson's character is great. He's, again, not a ton of depth, but I don't think he needed a ton of depth. He's charismatic enough to the point where every time he's on screen, he's stealing the scene, and that's his job as a good supporting character. When it comes to Debicki and Branagh, though, there is a little something missing, and it's hard to place what exactly. There's still a lot of really great stuff that happens between the two of them. Their dynamic is pretty spectacular, and it plays out really, really well, but you're kind of just thrown into it, and as characters, they're not entirely two-dimensional, but their motivations are a little weak. Elizabeth Debicki's character, I think in particular, Chris Nolan is getting a little bit too on the side of, I need to get back to my kids. He does it a lot. Like a fucking lot. Now with Inception and Interstellar, and with this, he's gotta start to kind of figure something else out, because I think people are getting a little tired of that and going, we don't need to see these poor bastards trying to get back to their kids anymore. But, you know, that wasn't terribly detrimental to me. Now, let's get into the big thing that everyone is talking about, right? The plot and the writing, because that's the topic of discussion. Now, years ago, you know, when Inception came out, there were very few people who walked away with it understanding everything. A lot of people had to go back and watch it again. But I don't think it was anything like this. I truly did. Well, I think I know the bare bone plot, where we started, how we got to the middle, and how we got to the end. I think I understand all of that, but it's the little details of this time inversion that is where I start to get fuzzy. At the beginning, Fleur Delacour tells Ron Stallworth, don't try to understand it, just feel it. And I appreciate that. But then they keep trying to get you to understand it. And a lot of stuff happens that you need to understand, especially the end. The ending is where it starts to get, okay, who's inverted right now? What version of that person is inverted? How did this person get there? How did they get back there? Holy shit. I turned to my friend a couple times, Burke, for those of you who remember that, at the end, there's a part where this guy, he's got a whiteboard, and he's going through the plan of what they're about to do, and I was fucking out, man. I had not a clue what the hell they were talking about anymore. There's a line towards the end of this film where someone says, we have a past in the future, and I was about ready to shoot myself in the movie theater. So the question becomes, did Christopher Nolan go too far? And I think he might have. And I hate to say that because I love him, but I think he might have done it. And what's so interesting about this is you would have to really struggle to find someone out there who would call Chris Nolan an incompetent filmmaker. He most certainly is not. He has made some of the best movies of all time, right? That will go down as classics. And he fucks with time all the time. And usually it works out really, really well with Memento or The Prestige or Inception or Interstellar. This time it might have been too much. I'm not going to lie to you. It may be pushing the boundary a little bit. Now, I want to see it again. And a lot of people are criticizing this concept of you have to see the film twice. People are going, that should never be an argument. You should be able to enjoy the film on the first watch. But I don't entirely agree with that, predominantly when it comes to Chris Nolan, because he's made this idea, an element of rewatches, sort of a part of his style as a filmmaker. It's almost to the point where I think it's a stylistic choice. And you know, think about Tarantino, right? You go into his films and you expect there to be gore, and you expect it to be overtly violent and gruesome. And people aren't going to complain about that because they expect it. But if he pushes it too far, then you can criticize it, which I think is sort of where I'm starting to float around a little bit in terms of criticism. But it's hard for me to hard judge this film without seeing it twice, because I do think that's the intention. I've heard that people are saying when you go back and see this thing again, you will notice things that make this film seem to be a masterpiece, that are very meticulously placed in there. And like I was saying earlier, Chris Nolan is a great filmmaker, and I refuse to believe that he would spend this amount of time working on a film with this amount of money and this amount of talent and put it into theaters, and at its core, at the script, it's nonsensical. It doesn't make sense. I firmly believe that this film makes sense, but that doesn't mean that I get it. So I think it's a part of Chris Nolan's style to see his films more than once. And I want to see it again. I want to see it again to try to fully understand what happened. Because at the end of the day, I've been asking myself this question for the last 24 hours. I've been going, did I enjoy this film? And do I want to see it again? And the answer is yes. This film is far from bad. I don't think this is a bad movie. I think at its worst, it's either going to be mediocre or it's going to be good. And I think at its best, it's going to be great. And it's honestly difficult for me to tell because there's so many thoughts in my head, but those are sometimes the best films, the ones that make you really think. People are talking about the fact that they're forgetting about the movie the moment they walk out, that they don't remember scenes. I don't believe that. I think this is an extremely memorable film, and there are very few movies like it. There are movies that it replicates in a sense, like Jason Bourne, but Jason Bourne has nothing like elements of this film. I love the structure of it, I love the way it's put together, and I just want to go back, knowing what happens, knowing how certain places are gotten to and arrived at, and I want to keep that in mind while I watch it and see what I notice. Will I be able to understand the dialogue this time? I don't know. I really don't. The mix is rough. I'm not gonna lie to you. The mix, it's one of the loudest films I've ever seen. I kind of had a headache at the end of it. And there are dialogue scenes that, I hate to say it, you just can't fucking hear them. There's one at the very end where John David Washington and Kenneth Branagh are talking, and Kenneth Branagh is talking into a phone that's being translated into a walkie-talkie, and he's kind of talking like this to keep quiet from his wife, and you can't understand a fucking word the guy is saying. John David Washington is yelling so you can hear what he's saying. I didn't have the first clue what Kenneth Branagh was talking about, and I just kind of gave up. But again, I want to see this thing again because Chris Nolan has sometimes been spotty as a writer. Every so often, I don't think all of the dialogue in this movie's perfect. I think a lot of it is good. There are moments that had me going, eh. I certainly don't think it's his best film. I think Inception is a far better piece of work. And I'm interested to see it again, to see if I'll like it more or if I'll like it less. These are just kind of my initial thoughts that I'm just sort of pouring out in front of you, and I'm interested to see if you agree. Let me know what you guys think of the movie. I know it's not out yet, technically. I got an early screening because Hollywood's just handing me their films. They're going, Connor, we need to know what you think. Tell us what you think. AMC's just got an early fucking access this week here, so I don't get shit, man. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of the movie once you guys get around to seeing it. And I'll either tweet or I'll post a letterboxed review when I get a chance to see it again. Hopefully this week. And I guess that's another thing is I am inclined to see it again. I want to see it again. I'll end on this. If you are not someone who enjoys going to see films twice, don't even see this once. You're not going to like it. You're just not. You're not going to like this film. You probably won't like many Chris Nolan films. And you probably have seen some and have gone, nah, I didn't really like that. You know? If you don't like Inception, if you don't like Interstellar, just don't. Don't do it. If you're the kind of person who likes watching movies once and understanding everything and moving on, check out the Dark Knight trilogy. You probably love it. It's probably great for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to watch a movie more than once. It's just, you have to be aware of that going into this movie, is that that's sort of the expectation. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.